And before I introduce him, I just want to say, when he was the doctor at the White House, they asked him, who's healthier? Who's a better physical specimen? Is it Trump or is it Obama? And he said, it's not even close. It's Donald Trump, not even close.
I mean, the truth of the matter is actually Trump hasn't gotten a lot. He's torn some stuff down. There's no law that he's passed that is transformative in this country. He passed a tax cut to give away some more money to rich folks, which Republicans have been doing that for years. But you can't name a piece of legislation that he's done that has actually changed the country, even for his own constituencies. So it's always easier to tear down than build up.
Oh, that's gonna hurt!
So while the Biden camp is rolling out the likes of two-time Academy Award winner Robert De Niro and former President Barack Obama, you can rest easy, MAGA crowd. In your corner, you have these misfits.
And the best that Biden can do is roll out a washed-up actor. And don't worry, my remarks will be shorter than the Irishman. I won't make you suffer for 3 hours. But the best they can do is roll out a washed-up actor.
New York, millions and millions and millions of dollars. And New York deserves so much better than this. And I cannot wait for the day that we win. We will. We're right. The entire country knows this is nonsense. They don't buy it. We're right.
But on a serious note, as Trump HQ gears up for damage control at the conclusion of his election interference case, it is important to not lose sight of the fact that regardless of what conclusion emerges, it won't change the fact that Donald Trump's record as president is already proof enough that he's unfit for the presidency. And former President Barack Obama perfectly highlighted this with the simplest of statements. It's easier to tear something down than to build it up.
I mean, the truth of the matter is actually Trump hasn't gotten a lot. He's torn some stuff down. There's no law that he's passed that is transformative in this country. He passed a tax cut to give away some more money to rich folks, which Republicans have been doing that for years. But you can't name a piece of legislation that he's done that has actually changed the country, even for his own constituencies. So it's always easier to tear down than build up.
The one constitutional office elected by all of the people is the presidency. So at a minimum, we should expect a president to feel a sense of responsibility for the safety and welfare of all 330 million of us, regardless of what we look like, how we worship, who we love, how much money we have, or who we voted for. But we should also expect a president to be the custodian of this democracy. We should expect that regardless of ego, ambition, or political beliefs, the president will preserve, protect, and defend the freedoms and ideals that so many Americans marched for, went to jail for, fought for, and died for. I have sat in the Oval Office with both of the men who are running for president. I never expected that my successor would embrace my vision or continue my policies. I did hope, for the sake of our country, that Donald Trump might show some interest in taking the job seriously, that he might come to feel the weight of the office and discover some reverence for the democracy that had been placed in his care. But he never did. For close to 4 years now, he has shown no interest in putting in the work, no interest in finding common ground, no interest in using the awesome power of his office to help anyone but himself and his friends. No interest in treating the presidency as anything but one more reality show that he can use to get the attention he craves. Donald Trump hasn't grown into the job because he can't. And the consequences of that failure are severe.
And that is what I want the focus of this video to be, because it is easy to report on Trump the criminal. I mean, he makes it easy. But far too many Americans still hold this man in the highest regard as some economic messiah, when the facts are simple. Donald Trump inherited a booming economy from Obama, rode its coattails, and then tanked it. And you can disagree, but the facts don't lie. He jumped aboard a fast-moving train, and aside from offering tax cuts to the 1%, tripling the national debt, what did he actually do for average Americans? Well, let's look. He promised to bring back manufacturing, made in America, he claimed. Well, which president actually did this. No, it was not Trump. It's Joe Biden.
So, Peter, this new AI Microsoft thing, $3 billion, big job creators, that's in Racine. Isn't that the same town that Foxconn said, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, we're going to build a big plant, and they never did?
Yes, and that was a huge Trump announcement back then, and he said that the factory was going to be the 8th wonder of the world, but then Foxconn decided to really scale back their plans, and the land is still available, so Microsoft is going in.
And this was never more apparent than recently in Racine County, where Trump had once touted a $10 billion Foxconn facility that suffered the same fate as his Obamacare alternative. Promised, never delivered. Whereas Biden delivered.
This is a newer subject, but Obamacare is a disaster. And I said, we're gonna do something about it. I saved Obamacare.
Donald Trump still does not have a health care plan. And so he's starting to project the lack of a plan onto Democrats, once again vowing to repeal Obamacare.
So we can repeal and replace. We're going to have a health care plan that's going to be second to none. We have 2 plans coming out in a very short period of time. The plan is coming out over the next 4 weeks.
Don't you ever tell people what the plan is?
Yeah, well, we'll be announcing that in about 2 months.
It's been some years since some of those clips and still nothing. No plan.
And this was indicative of Trump's entire economy. He promised that there would be growth from his tax cuts. Trump's tax cuts never delivered the promised growth. His budget deficits surged and then stayed relatively high under Biden. His tariffs and trade deals never brought back all the lost factory jobs he claimed they would. And by the way, I saw these kids, right, that are appealing to many young right-wing voters arguing the same empty right-wing talking points on a podcast with Don Lemon, which I'm ready and willing if you want to pose these same questions to me, and claimed that we can't rate Trump's economy during the pandemic. He woefully mismanaged the pandemic.
I feel about vaccines like I feel about tests. This is going to go away without a vaccine. And the China plague will fade.
Downplaying its severity, flip-flopping his way through lockdown measures.
My view is the school should open. This thing's going away.
Calling for bleach injections.
The disinfectant, where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection? A lot of people are taking, a lot of frontline workers are taking hydroxychloroquine.
Sowing doubt from the moment it surfaced.
It is going away, and it's probably going to go away now a lot faster because of the vaccine. It would go away without the vaccine, George.
And secondly, he and his followers want to take no blame for the disastrous economic ramifications and whitewash Trump's pandemic job numbers, but then they have no problem touting the gas prices that were at that point as some sort of positive when nobody was driving.
I got gas way down to $1.87 a gallon.
Therefore, demand was low and supply was cheap. It's how that whole business thing works. So yes, there was the pandemic.
It will go away. You know it is going away.
An event that caused historic job losses for which Trump accepts no responsibility, as well as low inflation for which Trump then takes full credit.
Contrast between the Trump administration's amazing success and Joe Biden's breathtaking failure. There's never been anything. Nobody's ever seen anything like this.
And then what happens as a result? Oh, that's right. Inflation skyrockets, which he and his followers then blame Biden for. It's so dumb, and somehow it works. And aside from not wanting to acknowledge Trump's role during the pandemic, they also don't want to talk about the recovery either. The fact that Biden inherited that train wreck economy, and look at what he's accomplished. A damn near miracle.
Okay, thank you very much. They've asked me to speak a little bit about the job numbers, and the job numbers just came out, and they're horrible. And and I say that not happily, I say that very unhappily. But the numbers are horrible. It's just these people are destroying our country. Here's another sign of it.
83,500 total jobs left Wisconsin during my predecessor's term. That's not on my watch. We're determined to turn it around. Thus far, since we've come to office, we've created, and with the governor's overwhelming leadership, we've created over 178,000 jobs in Wisconsin. We're going to create more here in Racine, and big time.
If you had told me that the unemployment rate after COVID was going to be back down to 4% or lower.
Yeah. Lowest in 50 years, isn't it?
Absolutely. And if you had told me that 15 million jobs would have been created, that wages are higher now than they were pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
And the most jobs created in history, correct?
In this 4-year period, yeah.
Honestly, everything from record job numbers, unemployment, wages, and GDP, which, by the way, Trump assured the public in 2017 that the US economy, with his tax cuts, would grow at 3%. But of course then added, I think it could go to 4 or 5 and maybe even 6% ultimately.
GDP, gross domestic product, that is the measure and the value of all goods and services produced in the United States, right? It's the size of the US economy. And like the rest of the world, we saw a significant drop. See when it goes down there, the constriction, that in GDP in 2020, that was the pandemic. That was under Donald Trump's watch. But just look at the recovery in the 4 years since. Look at that, go up. In fact, the US had the strongest recovery of all of its peers. Every country faced similar headwinds and challenges. Last year, our economy grew faster than any other nation in the G7. And when you zoom in a little further, now showing only the Biden years, it's essentially a straight line going up. That was not foreordained. A lot could have gone wrong. It's hard to pick yourself back up from a once-in-a-century pandemic and the disruptions.
And even if you take the pandemic and exclude it, growth after inflation averaged 2.67% under Trump. Include the pandemic-induced recession and the average drops to an anemic 1.45%. By contrast, growth during the second term of then-President Obama's averaged at 2.33%, and so far under Biden, it's growing above 3.4%. Higher GDP, higher stock market, which again Trump promised would crash, but it didn't. Better economy by every single measure. So tell me again, average Americans, what the hell did Donald Trump do for you?
The Donald is not really a plans guy. He's not really a facts guy either. He calls himself a business guy, which is true, but I have to say I know plenty of businessmen and women who've achieved remarkable success without leaving a trail of lawsuits and unpaid workers and people feeling like they got cheated. Does anyone really believe that a guy who spent his 70 years on this earth showing no regard for working people is suddenly going to be your champion, your voice?
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.